Okay, you ready?
Yeah,
Do you want me
yeah.
to play us in?
Please. Should we tell people? First of all, hi, I'm Anna, of Anna Rose Reads on Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky and all of the places, TikTok. Amber here has invited me today to come talk about some of my most anticipated releases for 2025. And she played us in beautifully with the harmonica because that was my Christmas gift to her. Um, I don't know why, but we both really like Blues Traveler.
I think the reason why is because they're amazing.
Okay, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
but like we really do. And so there is a specific video that every time it comes up on TikTok, I send it to Amber, and then I could think you've sent it back to me.
I think so.
And so we decided that we would do unserious Christmas gifts, and I was like, I know exactly what to get Amber, and I don't think I'll ever gift anything as good as that again. So I literally just sent a harmonica, and I was like, because you love Blues Traveler. And yeah, that's about as good as it gets for me.
Y- y-
I'm tapped out.
I wish I would have had Tucker like film me when I was opening it because I was like, oh my God, it's a harmonica. And then I sent you that video of me playing it in front of the Christmas tree. And then I was like, well, now I have to learn how to play the harmonica.
You
So,
do. Just naturally. It's like
yeah,
it's the gift that keeps giving, you know?
yeah.
So
So I'm actually the new member of the Blues Traveler. Um,
we'll be looking forward to the press release and we'll see you in their TikToks now. So that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. I'm leaving this book thing behind. I'm gonna go play my harmonica.
This is actually just a Blues Traveler fan club.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're all here,
I
but
actually just tricked you into sitting here and listening to me play this harmonica for an hour.
oh God. Oh God. Oh God.
Oh, can you imagine? I guess I'll introduce myself really quick. So I'm Amber Roy. I'm founder of Novel Nightmares. I review and talk about books a lot on Instagram, Blue Sky, sometimes on Substack. My handles are Amber K Roy REU. So you can find us there. And you can find Novel Nightmares at Novel Nightmares.
You know what's amazing? Is
But
I did not know that you pronounced your name that way, your last name this way.
yeah,
Like
that's fair. I feel like everyone thinks it's like Rue.
I said Ryu. Because I know
That's
people down here that are reuse, but
that makes more sense to me than
yeah.
I mean, I tell my husband this all the time. I'm like, should I go back to my maiden name? Because it was a lot easier for me.
Oh God, that'd be great. Yeah, this is just too complicated. We gotta ditch it. We gotta
Yeah,
move
I'm
on.
sorry.
We have to do
Yeah.
something else. Oh
For
God.
so short, it's really difficult, and I don't enjoy it.
The more you know. Yes. So we're here today to talk about some 2025 releases, and
Yes.
we have crafted a handy dandy shared note that we consolidated all of these onto. Do you want to get started with yours? Do you want me to get started with mine? Do we
Why
want
don't
to
you?
talk about something else first?
You know what? We can get started if you want, or we can talk about whatever you want. And also, you can start us off if you want.
Listen, we can just listen to Blues Traveler all day. But
I'm down.
I guess we'll talk about our
You're now
favorite up.
listening to Anna and Amber's radio station.
You do have a really good voice, like for radio, I think. I think it
You
would
do
work out
too.
well. Thank you. Okay. All right. To be serious, I think I'm gonna start off with some of my most anticipated reads. This one I think might fall a little bit more into the thriller category, but I think that there's gonna be some horror elements based off of what I've read and seen. But it's called Mask of the Deer Woman, and I just found out about this book like a few weeks ago by Laurie Dove. It's coming out on January 21st, I believe, from Berkeley. And basically, I believe it involves a missing young woman. There's a tribal marshal who is determined to find her and herself amidst all of this kind of turmoil. It sounds very much like the gritty kind of stuff that I love from like True Detective. Um, and the cover of it is stunning. I'm sure that we'll link all of these books somewhere. So if you want to go take a look at the cover, it reminds me of Stephen Graham Jones's Only Good Indians. So if to me,
Yeah.
if you mash up like True Detective and the Only Good Indians, I would be one happy camper. So that's like the big vibes I get from this one. And so yeah, I'm really excited for that one. I love whenever crime and horror kind of have an intersection. So I think that this will be one to watch. We'll find out. Have
I've,
you heard of this one yet?
I have heard of it
Okay.
just recently too, and I'm excited about it. I think it'll fit like that nice category of people who want to read thrillers but want something maybe a little bit more edgy than a normal like standalone run-of-the-mill type of thriller. I agree with the cover. It looks really great. I'm excited because I feel like Berkeley is getting more into thrillers and horror.
Yeah.
And I've really liked what they've put out so far. So I'm excited for this one too.
Me too. And like we were talking about this about some of Ronald Malfi stuff, and it's like
Yeah.
from the marketing standpoint, it's difficult to know how to market these books. Like, hey, should we go with thriller and then run the risk of like upsetting people who are looking for like a tried and true whodunit story, getting, like kind of upset whenever it's like, oh, something else? Or do you like pitch it as horror and then have people like, oh, it wasn't scary enough, and
Yeah.
I hate that criticism. That's not something that I really ever like to hear about anything because I think horror is much more than that. But I think this might be one of those ones that's kind of like tricky to market, and I'll be interested to see how it goes, and I'm really interested to read it to see like where it really falls.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other part of that too, and I think this was maybe like what I probably wasn't doing the best job with Malfi when we were talking about it is I do worry sometimes when we put things into horror that it's turning off readers who are like, well, that's going to be too
Yeah.
scary for me. Or, if you read primarily lit fic, like it's not going to fit that category for you either. And I think you do a good job of this too, of like explaining to people like, hey, no, you would like this if you liked XYZ.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of on us as reviewers sometimes to make that clear of like,
Yeah.
this isn't too scary. Like you'll enjoy it if you enjoy a thriller, if you like lit fic. Stephen Graham Jones, I think, is another good example of that, where I think you could put his books in a lot of different genres and they would fit pretty nicely.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah, so that's my first pick is Mask of the Deer Woman. So, what's yours?
Okay, so mine is speaking of Stephen Graham Jones. I'm gonna go with Buffalo Hunter Hunter, coming out March 18th from Saga Press. So I have not read this yet. I know a lot of our friends have, and they've loved it. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it yet. But it's about a woman named Etsy. She discovers the journal of her grandfather, and the journals talk about him, his journeys with a Blackfeet called Good Stab. So it is a vampire story, which is very exciting. I feel like Stephen does monsters very well, but he also kind of reimagines the way they look. So I'm really excited to dig into this one. I've been saving it because I know I'm gonna like plow through it once I get started, and I kind of don't want to be in a world where I don't have new Stephen Graham Jones. So I'm taking my time with it.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. So like I want to say like I am excited for this book, but I am a little cautious because like my brain and historical fiction just do not get along well. But like
Yeah.
it has been done successfully. Like Philip Fracassi had a novel that was kind of historically based. There was another one that I ended up reading and loving, and it was no problem. But I do know that this one is kind of heavy on like I think dual timelines and going back and forth. And so I am a little nervous about it because I've heard people say it's kind of a slow burn. And we all know how Stephen Graham Jones writes. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But like sometimes you have to like let it marinate. So I'm waiting for the perfect time to open it, much like you, because I can't wait. I've heard great things about it. And so it's just like one of the things like I think I need to wait for my brain to be ready for it.
I feel that. I feel like with Stephen too, sometimes it helps to hear it on audio. And so
Yeah.
I may start reading it, like the advanced copies that we have, but also may try to do it on audio as well, just so I can get that full experience. I feel like it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would probably do the same thing too.
Yeah.
My number two pick, oh, this is a fun one. Victorian Psycho, by Virginia, and I'm probably gonna so botch this last name. Fieto? I, I don't really know,
Sounds
but
right to
anyway,
me.
yeah, this one comes out on February 4th, and I mostly am looking forward to this one because I have friends who have already read it and said that it was absolutely batshit. I'm pretty sure that it kind of centers around like a governess, and she's in charge of these children. Um, but then, of course, it's a horror novel, so bad things happen. So, I think it's pretty intense. And I think it actually falls around Christmas, so I might actually let's just make this a Christmas read. I might just read this next week because I did get approved for the arc. So yeah, I think the last line of this says that it's an iconic new literary psychopath. So like if you want to sell me on something, that's about how you do it.
Seriously.
Yeah. So I mean, I've just like in broad terms, nobody has really talked to me specifically about what this book is about, but everybody just says that it's fantastic and it's unhinged, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm all for it. And the really cool thing about this one is I think it's already been optioned and picked up by A24.
I think
And
so.
I think Margaret Qualley is already like lined up to be in it from The
Oh
Substance.
yeah.
And I mean, she's been in plenty of other things, but most recently The Substance. So it's like it's got a lot of buzz. Like whenever I Googled it to pull up the synop, it was like all about the film deal and not the book, and the book's not even here yet.
I've heard the same thing. I've also heard that this is a great Christmas read too, and I have it on my list for next week too. So maybe we can read it and talk about
Buddy
it.
read,
Um,
buddy read.
but same thing. I mean, I've heard about it and I've heard great things. I don't really know other than the synopsis what it's about, but I like going into books like this blind, so
Yeah,
I'm excited for it. And also how amazing that it has already been picked up for an adaptation too.
I know. I agree. Your number two pick.
So my number two pick is something that we both recently read and also that made us recently cry. Um, which is When the Wolf Comes Home from
Oh
Nat
my God.
Cassidy, which is coming out April 22nd from Tor. So, I mean, I think that this is one of I feel like I say this a lot, but I genuinely mean it that you should go into this book as blind as you can.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if you agree with that.
This one in particular, I think it's not like it's not like there's certain spoilers, but there are certain things that I think if you read in this book and you don't know about them, your reading experience is that much richer.
Yeah.
Especially like if you're like fans of certain tropes or things and like you're just not expecting to find them in this book, you're like, he's doing
Yeah.
he's he's doing whatever or taking a storyline from here or there or something like that. And that's what I think makes it really special on top of everything else, but he just does so much. So I recommend everybody going in as blind as possible, like bare minimum facts.
Yeah, I agree. I guess a very high level summary is that it's about a girl named Jess who finds a young boy. He seems like he's potentially been abused, but he's definitely afraid and running from something. And then what he is running from begins a chase with Jess and the boy. So there's a lot to unpack in this book. Nat's going to be on Novel Nightmares next year. I don't know how I'm going to make it through talking about this book without maybe crying again.
Oh, I know.
But I
I
loved it, and
agree.
I'm excited for people to read it. I mean, I think Nat obviously is such a great writer. Mary's great. Nestlings is great. Restop is great. But I think that this one in particular is going to resonate with a lot of people, and so I think that this is going to be huge for Nat next year, and I'm really excited for everyone to be able to read it.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I mean, like it's not like he's not an established writer. I mean, Mary went like freaking viral on TikTok.
Yeah.
People love that book. I mean, and I do too. But When the Wolf Comes Home like holds a very special place in my heart. Like that book is just like oh, it handles so much and like the way that Nat writes it is so smart. I really can't say a whole lot about it without getting into spoilers, but
Yeah.
it's one that I think was like age really well and like last really well. And like a lot of I've seen a lot of like the reviews and stuff for it, like harkening it back to 80s big, horror that the some of those themes. And I think
Yeah.
that that's true. It's just kind of like or throwing everything out there and like it's not seeing what sticks. It's like Nat knows what's gonna stick, and he that's what he's writing, and that's what makes it so great.
I agree with that. I think too, the other part of it that was great to me was that there's so many lines in it that you can take it face value and you're like,
Oh
this is a
yeah.
great story. But then when you unpack them more, you're like, oh,
I know
okay.
it's one that like I think it'll probably hurt to reread it because
Yeah.
it's a heavy book, but I think like I do want to reread it because like I literally read it like just about in a day because it's like that kind of like compulsive reading experience that you have to just find out what happens.
Yeah.
And so like I think that there's like you still get so much out of the book that way. Um but there's still I think a lot like if you want to go back and unpack more, you definitely can. And so I might go back and reread it before we like before release day, but it's so freaking good.
Yeah, I think I would definitely reread it too. I guess this one though is pretty heavy on trigger warning, so
Yeah.
just make sure you're staying safe if you have any areas that you're sensitive about. And Nat does a really good job of laying those out at the beginning. So
Yeah, I love his little trigger warning note. He's the best, man. I just love that guy. He's awesome.
he's so great. He's so nice too, which I feel like we all need
Yes.
a little of right now.
Yeah, a quality human being, like in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so moving on to my number three pick. Did you read Edenville by Sam Rebline? Rebline?
I haven't. It's on my
Okay.
TBR, and I keep like it's one of those books that I'm like, I know I need to read this, and I haven't.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of like bonkers off the wall horror, that is that book. That is like insanely it gets like cosmic, it gets just like unhinged. It's like literally everything that can go wrong goes wrong. Like it's just it's so much fun. But to tie it in here, Poorly Made and Other Things is being released on February 11th. And this is a short story collection from Rebelline or Rebelline. Sorry, Sam, if I'm mispronouncing your last name. If you ever see this, I am so sorry. Um, it's set in the same place as Edenville, and it's a place called Renfield
oh, cool.
County. And like Renfield County is just a place of like certified weird shit. Like it is just a place that people know bad, weird things happen, and they don't really know why. And so this collection, I think, follows like different stories from all over that county. So I think that it'll probably have like obviously some tie into his first novel. But I'm just really excited to see what he can do because, like I said in Edenville, it is just like an insane novel that like you get a sampling of all of the weirdness and like that's what makes it so fun. It's just how weird it is. And so like to see it expand in this way, I think is going to be so much fun. And I feel like he could probably write like three or four collections of stories from this place because it's like if you threw every episode of the X-Files and had it set in the same place, that would be Renfield County. That's how it feels anyway.
I'm excited for this. I feel like now I need to like go back and read Edenville and then so I can be ready for this. I really like when authors do this, like they expand that universe and like bring you back into it. I think it's really clever. So I'm excited for this. I have heard a lot of buzz about this one too. Like I think I know if you maybe I'm sure people in our group have read this book too, and it's like
Yeah,
they
a
had
few of
good
them.
things to say. So
It's definitely one that like whenever because I am not a cosmic horror person. Like I just get like super confused as to like
me
what's
too.
going on. Like I just can't follow it. But I still had so much fun with Edenville and like you just have to lean into the absurdity of it all. Like you just have to embrace the I don't know what's happening. I'm just taking what's happening on the page at face value and then like it'll all just like rest assured it'll come together later and it's going to be zany and insane and it's just like one of the most fun reading experiences that you can have. So if you're looking to pick that up like don't go in expecting like I'm gonna learn the facts of life. I mean, like there's some of that there if you want it, but like it's just fun. Like it's some of the best kind of horror. It's so much fun.
I met Sam at AuthorCon this year too, and he's
Mm.
also just really amazing and great.
Oh, he
So
makes the best like reels and TikToks. Or I think it might just be reels, but he's funny. Like I want to be like friends with him. He's so funny.
I do too. That's our new. Okay, this is actually now just a segment on us trying to be friends with Sam.
Yes. We're
This is our
starting a
petition.
campaign. We're listen, Blues Traveler and Sam. That's it.
My
Yes.
next pick is Wake Up and
Yes.
Open Your Eyes by our favorite Clay McLeod Chapman, coming out very soon, like very, very soon, January 7th. So I am reading this now and it's wild. It's a wild ride. I know you've read it too, and you
Yeah.
had the same reaction for this book to come out. I mean, I'm excited for Clay. I think it's had a lot of buzz. What I've read so far has been really great. It's definitely brutal. I feel like it's
Yeah.
probably the most brutal thing I've read from Clay so far. I
Yeah.
mean, it's intense and it starts like really quick. I think I had texted you and was like, I'm only on page like 20 or something, and like crazy things are happening throughout this book. That said, Clay's also coming on Novel Nightmares, and I know you've spoken to Clay too.
Yes,
So I
yes.
feel like there's going to be a lot to unpack with this book, but I'm loving it so far. But it is really intense and really wild. And again, I think another one that you probably need to lean into because I think if
Yeah.
you don't, you're not going to appreciate it. So it's coming out January 7th from Quirk, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an insane book. And like you said, like you just have to kind of accept it for what it is. And like and like as you mentioned, I had the pleasure of talking to Clay, and I know that it's a book that is saying something, and like I know how well, I don't know how it feels to write a book that is saying something, but from talking to Clay, I can understand how that feels different than just, writing another run-of-the-mill book. And like that's one of the great things that horror does is like you can have the Edenvilles where it's just so much fun, all these crazy things. And then you could, by the same token, you can have all these crazy things and then it's saying something about like the cultural moment. And like that's what Wake Up and Open Your Eyes is doing. And like to be quite frank, like I don't think that you've gotten this far into it yet. But like nobody is safe. Like nobody's political affiliation, nobody's interest, like nobody is safe. Like Clay comments on everything. And that's what I really, really like about the book, honestly, because it's a complex thing to write about and to talk about, and it can be really uncomfortable. And like he just freaking did it, and
Yeah.
I have all the respect to him for doing it. And I think I think we're gonna look back on this one, and it may not be the most pleasurable read, but it's gonna be like, damn, yeah, that's what it felt like then. Like
Yeah.
he encapsulates that. He encapsulates the fear of like not knowing where the world is heading in terms of like connection and ideology and how we're going to keep existing as a society because like the way that we've been doing things doesn't seem to be working and we're just keep on trucking along. So it's a really, really interesting book. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. Like you said, it's probably the most gnarly thing that Clay has written. But I love how it is a snapshot of right now. That is probably my favorite thing about that book.
I agree with you. I mean, just as far as I'm into it, I feel the same way. And I feel like the relatability of it too is going to make it really resonate with people. I mean,
Yeah.
from what I've seen, we've all have family members that can fall into these categories. And I feel like Clay is really, really good, maybe like one of the best at taking those complex relationships and breaking them down and making them somewhat even more complex, but also easier to understand.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, they're complicated because he's making them like horrific. But then
yeah,
then when you get some space from it, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense because like everything's elevated to 10.
yeah.
So it's a complex thing that he does, but I totally agree with you that he does in fact do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I'm really excited about this one. I know feels like we've been waiting for a while for it to come out and it's almost here. And I'm really excited for everyone to read it. And I'm also just really excited for Clay.
Yeah, same here. So speaking of being excited, this year we are getting a full-length novel from, and again, I'm gonna mess up this name and I apologize in advance, but Augustina Biestec, uh, see, it's already lost, it's already done. But the author of Tender as the Flesh, she has a novel coming out called The Unworthy. And basically it comes out on March 4th before I get into the synopsis. This is, I believe, like nun horror,
I
and
think so.
feminist nun horror at that. So basically set in a convent, this woman is detailing her life, and there she was a member of something that is known as the Sacred Sisterhood and deemed unworthy. So she wants to, it sounds like a little culty too. Like, I mean, there's that there if you want it. And so I think that she wants to rise in the ranks of this convent, to please the superior sister. Um, and outside of this convent, there's other things that are happening, bad things that are happening to the world. And so then all of a sudden the stranger makes it into the convent and that changes everything. The final tagline of this is really just about being a master of feminist horror. And I think when I read Tender is the Flesh for the first time, I don't know that I was ready to read it. Because it's just a novel that like you think you're on board with it, and then you read the last 15 pages and you're like, oh, wait, I am not. Like, it's one of those books that you like kind of have to know what you're walking into. And that was like one of the first contemporary horror books that I ever read. So that was a shock. But
That's a pretty extreme one to start with too, I feel like.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I was like reading thrillers and I was like, oh, I'll give this a try. And then I didn't eat meat for a week. So but I love what she manages to say with all of these, and like for the same reason that we enjoy Clay's work, like what we manage to pull from these things after the fact, once they're said and read and read and observed and all that. So I'm interested to see what this is about. I know like nun horror has kind of been a thing this last year because we had Immaculate and then we had The First Omen, which were kind of religious horror aspects. And so this is going to be, I'll be interested to see how this goes. And it sounds a little bit more unconventional, but I'm all for it. And I have an arc of it, so I am eagerly awaiting my whenever I feel is the best time to start it because my reading is chaotic right now.
No, I feel the same way. I have an arc of it too, and I keep like I have it queued up in my Kindle, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
no, like not
I
yet,
think,
but I want
I think
to.
we should just blame Nat because I think we were both emotionally wrecked by When the Wolf Comes Home because that was like
Yeah.
one of the things we both recently read, and I
Yeah.
am not ready to move on from that book. I
No,
have been
me
grieving
either.
for like 2 weeks now.
I think the other thing that sounds interesting about this is the dystopian part too. So it's
Yeah.
that it has the climate crisis. I feel like we're seeing more of that in horror, but not as much as I would think that we would, just given what's going on. And so I'm really interested in how she is going to tie this with the nun aspect. This sounds great. I love like angry women or
Yeah.
women getting revenge stories. So anything from a book that's coming out of a feminist angle, I'm all about. I'm really excited for this one. Maybe this is another one you and I can buddy read and obsess
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, I do like I like the aspect of like insular horror. Like you have
Yeah.
like the micro horror and then you have the macro horror. So like the idea that she might be looking at the smaller horrific things within the convent and then the mass scale implications of the same things that are happening there like in the world. And that's, obviously what makes it dystopian, but I mean, I love that. That seems like a really cool like sociological study of like where we're at and like the small things that we do and how it affects everything else. So
Yeah, I completely agree with
plenty of excitement to go around.
that. So Senseless by Ronald Malfi is my next pick. So it comes out on
This
April
is one that
15th.
I bullied you into
You did.
reading.
You and then so it comes out on April 15th from Titan. You bullied me into reading it. And um again, like I think it's another one that like just go into it blind. Like
Yeah.
just don't read reviews online. Trust us when we say it's amazing. And just go into it. I think like halfway through, I was like, I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm enjoying the ride. But by the end, I knew what was going on and I loved it. I I'm like trying to figure out a way to like talk about this book without spoiling it.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a
hard.
detective that's investigating a murder. Big True Detective vibes for this one. I can easily see this being a mini series on HBO
Oh,
or Apple.
it's like the best unwritten, unpublished,
Yeah.
whatever season of True Detective that we haven't seen yet. Like it
Yeah.
is so good.
Like I'm gonna be upset if I don't watch this on my screen.
Yeah, me too. It felt cinematic to me, and like, there are some parts of that book that like don't really make a whole lot of sense when you're reading them, and then you're
Yeah.
at the end, you're like, oh, that's what that was. I would
Yeah.
love to see how they would pull that off on the screen. Love
Me
to see
too.
it.
I think a big book next year. I think everyone's gonna really buzz about it and talk about it, and rightfully so. It is that good. I'm excited to see what Malfi does next. Like I feel like this was kind of like it reads like his other books, but I feel like at the same time it's different. And so I'm curious like if
Yeah,
that's going to continue on. This is definitely one of those books though that I would like to see in like a different genre. I think it does fall into horror, but I do
yeah,
think that people who like thrillers would really, really love this book. I mean, it is scary, but it's not like overly scary. And it's not, I mean, it's grisly, but it's not like extreme brutality or
yeah.
anything.
Yeah, if I had to describe it, I'd say it's probably like more like unsettling and like psychologically unsettling and
Yeah.
very bleak by the end of it. So like you like in terms of the ending, you have to you're it's one of those books and like much like Nat's When the Wolf Comes Home and so a little bit with Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. This is my prediction for 2025 horror based on like these three books: Senseless, When the Wolf Comes Home, and Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. I think 2025 is going to be big swings in horror.
Yeah.
Like going there. Not, I mean, not that horror has ever really shied away, but really not being subtle about getting to a certain point and then paying off. And then, like, by the end of it, you don't really need to have concrete answers about some things because I think a lot of what horror is doing right now is letting some things sit with you and like letting that say more about the book and what your interpretation of it rather than like what's right before you. And I think that's something that Malfi writes exceptionally well. And like you said, I'm interested to see if he keeps like ratcheting up. Like it feels like he went from like 10 to 11 on this. Like what's his next going to be? Because whenever I tell you this book is insane, I mean, there's like one line that kind of like changes everything. And I told you about it when I read it. I was like, oh, this just became a different book.
Yeah. I know exactly
Um,
what you're talking about.
yeah. So, I mean, he's that good to be able to pull it off without you like catching that it's coming.
Yeah.
Um, And yeah, I mean, it's great. I love it. It's gritty. It's a little bit meaner than I might say than some of his other things in terms of like actual cruelty, but I think that if you can handle like care and slaughter, you should read this book. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you've read Pretty Girls, you can read this easy.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison. I definitely think if that was like if you were fine with reading that, this will be right up
Yeah.
your alley. It's just great.
Yeah, big fan of this one.
Yeah, I would actually love to see a sequel for this one. I don't think that's really spoilery, but
Yeah.
like I want to live in this world a little bit longer, I think.
Yeah. And like what he does too is he writes like a pretty wide cast of characters with this one, which I don't know that he always does with his books. Well, he
I
did with
don't
Small Town. He did with Small Town
yeah,
Horror, but I'm thinking like with Come With Me, that was a little bit more a bit smaller of a cast, but no, this one, I mean, it's like three separate people that really don't really have anything to do with one another, and he manages to make all of them compelling, all of their circumstances compelling, and then brings it to a conclusion that you will not forget, I can assure you.
yeah. No, definitely.
For sure. Okay, so taking a look, my next pick is I've talked about this book before, and I've been screaming about it. And if somebody can get me an arc, I swear to God, I will give you my kidney. It is The Haunting of Room 904 by Erica T. Worth. It comes out on March 18th. Mostly, like I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even read the synopsis before wanted this book. I mean, I saw the cover and the cover's fantastic. And then I read Erica's other book a couple years ago, White Horse, and I loved Erica's writing style. She's also somebody who's kind of got some grittiness to her, some like punkness to her, and I really, really was impressed by her by White Horse, and she just kind of leans into acknowledging some things. Like she's a Stephen King fan, and she just like leans into it and like doesn't try and like skirt around it in her books. And I think that's going to be something that may come into play with this one. I'm not entirely certain. But it's about a woman who is like paranormally inclined. She can like, I don't know if we were going to run with the word psychic, but she is familiar with spirits and communicating with them in some way, shape, or form. So she's like a paranormal investigator in Denver, and then I believe her sister either goes missing or dies, and nobody really knows what happened to her. And it all centers around this hotel. So she must go to the hotel to figure out what's going on. And it's kind of pitched as like a paranormal thriller. Knowing Erica, it's gonna be scary. Like I don't like there were some scenes in White Horse that I was like, okay, we're going there. Um, and I think that she's got the style to like write the story so fantastically. Like I'm totally here for it, regardless of where it falls genre-wise. I mean, I am just so excited to read this book. It's got some of the best things like haunted hotels, the paranormally inclined, and I think it's going to be like some Shining vibes. Apart from, like the main character maybe having like an aspect of the shine and the hotel stuff. I think tonally and thematically will hit on more than that. But yeah, I just want to get my hands on this book. I want to read it so bad.
I do too. I want to read this one too, and I also am waiting to see if I get an arc of it. But it's on my TBR. I actually have it written down in my calendar because I'm like, I need this one when it comes out. I didn't read White Horse. I need to. I have it. I just haven't had a chance to get to it. But I heard amazing things. But this one just sounds really, really good. I agree with you. I've heard the same thing about her leaning into it and kind of you know, she's a Stephen King fan, like that's present. The cover for this one is really great. I could see this being like a book of the month pick or like an art
Yeah.
pick, and I really want that for her because I know White Horse was a big hit, and I want this one to be too.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I got White Horse in my Book of the Month box back whenever I subscribed to it. So that's how
Yeah,
I found her. But yeah, no, I mean, she's got like I'm trying to think of the word that would best describe her style, and it's not quite gritty, but I guess it's kind of like grungy. Like I don't know.
yeah.
There's some substance to her characters, and like immediately, like, it's one thing to write a character that you end up caring for down the line, but she's able to like institute those feelings immediately. And I always really love when an author does that. So I'll be really interested to see where this story goes.
Yeah, I'm interested in it too. I haven't seen a lot of reviews for it, so I think maybe people are holding it a little bit close to the vest, which I can appreciate for a book like this because I do think it'd be easy to spoil.
Yeah.
Another one that I really want to go into with just kind of like no preconceived notions and just completely blind.
That's pretty much like if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about with synopsis, it's because I try not to like fun fact about me. I try not to read them. If I
Same.
know that I have an author that I like, I will like follow them anywhere, honestly. Like
Me
just
too.
I'll read whatever. And so if like I've seen and a lot of times like like we're following a lot of authors on social media and stuff, so like we'll see them like get comps or pitch things a certain way and like that's good enough for me
Yeah,
because
me
like
too.
there are certain things I don't want spoiled for myself and like they're the fun of reading the book. And like I never want to be an Abigail situation, the movie, where they like could have had the best twist ever and then they freaking revealed it in the trailer.
Yeah.
Like that was so maddening, but I digress.
No, I'm the same way. And I'm also, I mean, I know we shouldn't, but like I do judge a book by a cover. Like if the cover fits like the vibe that I need, I'm like, that's good enough for me. Like you're gonna home with me. We're gonna read you.
I love it. I support it. I'm the same way.
So my next book is The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig, coming out on April 29th from Del Rey. So this book broke my heart. I think I told you after I'd finished it that I just
You
cried
did.
so much. Essentially, I mean, there's a group of friends. They discover a staircase in the middle of the woods. One of their friends goes missing, and so they decide as adults to go back and try to find this friend. And pure chaos ensues. This book is dark. I mean, I feel like it's one of the darker books from Chuck. To me, it was like a little bit grislier than his other books. It's not a doorstopper like the other. I know sometimes people get intimidated by his books because they're very long. This one's still relatively long. I'd say what, maybe like 400 and some pages.
Yeah, I think it's like knocking on 400 if it's not quite there, but close
Yeah,
enough.
but it moves quick. I mean, there is some world building that you need to read, but it's really easy. I'm not a good fantasy reader, and it was
Yeah.
easy enough for me. But I loved this book. I mean, I think it was great. I'm really excited for people to read it, especially because I do think that it can appeal to people who like sci-fi and horror and fantasy. Um, but it is really sad. But I am excited
Yeah.
for it, and I'm excited too because I feel like Chuck's books are always timely in the sense
Yeah.
of like what's going on with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like I'm like, oh, I can relate to this now. This is another one that I would really like to go back and reread just to see like a new perspective on it next year from like a different time in my life.
Yeah, that
But
makes sense.
again, I'm excited for people to read this. I think people will really love it. I'm really excited for it to be out there. I'm also just excited to talk to people about it. I know you and I spoke about it, but I'm like, please, I need to talk to you about the ending of this book.
Yeah. No, I think what I like the most about what Chuck has done with this book is, we've all had like our creepypasta fascinations on Reddit and like the things that we kind of to hone into more than others. And, like the staircase in the woods phenomena is one of those things that like Reddit has just taken off with. I mean, that is one of I remember years ago reading all of the Reddit threads on all of this stuff. And so I like that he was able to take that and kind of take it in a different direction because like the creepypasta stuff that was written on Reddit is all very like kind of jump scary, just like eerie, but Chuck makes it very personal and very character driven,
Yeah.
which is really really cool to see. And so I like where he took it after that. And I haven't read House of Leaves. But I feel like he taps into just what I know of the book. I feel like he taps into some of that with this one.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting like collision with like the staircase in the woods thing. So it's a really impressive book. I'm really excited to see how people find it too. I think that my favorite still from him has gotta be I just really like Black River Orchard
Oh, it's
because
so good.
it was just bad shit. Like I loved how like at 75% of that book like like truly anything could happen.
Yeah.
Like literally, you
I
couldn't even think of what was gonna happen next.
I completely agree. I mean, that book is wild. Like the whole time you're like, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
That's great. And like, who knew that you could learn so much about apples from a horror book?
So true. So true. But the thing that does tie this book and Black River Orchard together, the staircase in the woods, I mean, it would be like you still don't know what's gonna happen, but I find that the staircase in the woods is more of like an emotional novel from him and like
Yeah.
kind of introspective in some aspects on like the human condition. And so it does read a little bit heavier
Yeah.
than some of the things that he's, written about before, I feel like. But I mean, I had a great time still. I mean, I think it'll go over very well with everybody. I think it'll be something that a lot of people will see and like, oh, I recognize that from pop culture, like that that idea and want to pick it up and read it. So I think that I'll be interested to see if it plays out that way.
I agree with you. I think if people really, if you liked Wayward or and Wanderers,
Yeah.
that duology, that this you would really like this too, because it is a little bit, I feel like, more emotional than Black River Orchard, which is also emotional, but more like
Right.
action packed. I feel like than this book is, even though there's a
By
lot of
the end, yeah.
action in
Yeah,
this
by the
book.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so true, so true. Okay, let's see. What is my next pick? Okay, my next pick is Bloodstains by Gaslight by Red Lugo, and it comes out on March 29th. I read her novella this year, In Excess of Dark, and that is a heavy novella, but I loved it. There's something that Red confronts with that novella that, like, again, she is just going there, and I think that she's probably going to do the same with this one because I'm pretty sure that this is a vampire novel that
Ooh.
confronts like ideas of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, those kinds of things that women experience. It's set in 1997, um, and it's senior year for this aspiring astronomy student. Her name is Reese. The only thing that's kind of holding her back from moving forward in her life is she has this kind of shitty boyfriend named Michael. Um, Basically, they have been friends for years, but he's growing into somebody that she doesn't really recognize anymore. And so she prepares to break up with him, and he gets involved in a tragic accident. From there, things happen. Think that's probably best to leave it there. I haven't read this one yet. It's another one that I am really, really anxious to read, but I have a feeling that I know what she's going to be saying and doing with this book, and I'm all here for it. And even if it goes in a different direction, I'm really excited to see where she takes it. It's another one that I've heard really good things about from a few of our friends who have read it. I'm just like a fan of her in general. Like I like how she is not afraid of, she's bold. Like, and I really, really enjoy that in her, like the confidence that she writes with. It is so refreshing to read.
I need to read more of her work. I haven't read any of it, but I know that I've heard great things. This sounds amazing. I'm here for like more vampire novels
Yeah.
always, especially with a fresh take, which sounds like this one's probably going to have. This sounds really, really great. I'm actually going to make a note to make sure I add this to my list too.
Yeah. I think it comes out from Bridges Gate, which I think that they're indie. So
Okay.
I don't know that like a lot of people know about this one. And so I really hope that people do have it on their radar because like I said, I'm always really impressed by the things that she writes. I want to say that she had a short story in this Halloween anthology that I read like 2 years ago. That was very good. It was one of my favorites in there. But she's just a really talented writer and like she obviously has ideas that I align with based on some of her other stuff. So I'm just all here for wherever she decides to explore next, wherever she goes. So yeah, like bring me pain, bring me suffering. Come on, let's do it. She's not afraid to do it. Let's go.
Yeah. So I love a book that is not afraid to do it and an author who's not
Yeah.
afraid to do it too. So I feel like it's frustrating sometimes to read horror where you're like you're so close to getting to that
Yeah,
line, but it won't cross it. And I feel like sometimes you have to cross it, especially depending on the subject matter. This sounds really great.
absolutely.
I'm glad that you put this on your list because I hadn't heard about it, so I'm excited.
I think it's on NetGalley too. So if you want to request it, or if
Oh,
anybody
I
wants
need
to
to.
request it, I think that you can. So
That's good to know. I'm gonna do that after we get done. Well, after my
yeah.
harmonica practice, and then I'll go do
After our Blues Traveler rendition of
it.
their whole discography. Actually, that's
Um,
gonna be the paid portion of this. This is all free to everybody, but then if you need to subscribe to our Substacks, and then it'll be behind the paywall if you want it.
can you imagine people like sign up and we just send them this email and it's just a thing for them to download?
Like the different packages is like, regular or whatever, and then the next package is Run Around by Blues Traveler, and then the next one is like whole album.
Or hot takes on the OC is like the ultimate package. Like it's just us talking about
Yes.
the
Oh my
OC for
God.
hours.
For anybody who doesn't know or has not seen the OC, I mean, it's the most dramatic, ridiculous show that has ever come out the 2000s. And I don't know what got me to start watching that series, but I texted Amber and I was like, "Have you seen this shit?" And she's like, "Oh my God, have I?" And then, it's kind of like the foundation of our friendship. So I mean, I just watch now and I text Amber whenever this off the wall shit happens. And so basically what I'm saying is we should start a paid tier for our OC rants and maybe just start like a podcast, honestly.
I feel like I look, maybe this is the ego of me, but I feel like people would love our podcast.
Listen, okay, so drop a comment if you want a podcast from us and tell us, do you want it to be Blues Traveler centric or the OC centric? The horror is not an option. Everybody gets that for free.
Yeah, you don't have to. Honestly, let's be honest, we probably wouldn't make you pay for either of those either.
It is 1 penny.
We like to yap, and I feel like we would probably do it for very cheap.
The absolute cheapest. Just watch it and that'll be enough.
Yeah, you're paying us through your kindness of watching
Yeah.
it.
Anyway, back to your next pick.
So I mean, I feel like everyone's anticipating Grady Hendrix's new book, Witchcraft
Oh
for
yeah.
Wayward Girls. It's coming out on January 14th by Berkeley. Um, it's about a book for teenage girls who are pregnant and they get sent to these homes and witchcraft ensues. Um, you're welcome. I've summed up the book for you. Um, I mean, I loved this. It's heavy. It's super smart. Um, I need to reread it because I read it when I was sick and it kind of feels like a fever dream, which
I've
it's
done
kind
that
of,
before. It's always a fun experience, like to come. I think I read Peter Straub's Ghost Story when I was running fever, which is an
yeah,
experience, I can tell you that much.
I imagine so. I love when we have a new Grady Hendrix book coming out. I mean, I think, Grady's incredibly smart. His books are funny. His books are smart. They're scary. They're super accessible though, and I think that makes it fun. Um, there's definitely a place for horror that isn't for everyone, but I do have like a special fondness in my heart for books like this that we can recommend to anyone looking to get into horror, looking for something new to read. And I feel like this book really fits that bill. Um, the other part of it too is that when there's a new Grady Hendrix book out, that means there's like a new Grady Hendrix talk, and I'm all for it. So um, I'm really excited for people to read this. I think it's different than his other books, where I think people are going to be a little surprised by it in a good way. It's a huge book. Like I think it's significantly bigger than most of his other
Yeah, it's a long
books.
one. Surprised because normally with Grady, we get like kind of beat over the not beat over the head, but like you're
Yeah,
not missing the horror. And given the subject matter of this book, I think that he recognized that he didn't have to lean so
yeah,
hard on horror elements and it's still super effective. Like I know I told you about this whenever I picked it up. I mean, it was shitty timing on my part whenever I decided to read it. I read it right after the
yeah,
election. And I just like it took me a while to get through it because I'm like, I don't know that I can read about this and know like this part of this is not fiction. Like there are parts of that book that
yeah,
are based in fact and the reality for women. And I was like, God, I just don't know if I can keep going. But what I will say is if you do feel this way about this book whenever you read it, there's a reason that you feel this way, and that's a good thing, and that's why it makes the book so special. And then by the end of it, oh my God, I think it's my favorite ending that I've ever read from him. Or
yeah.
like one of my favorite endings, like period. I mean, it just brought me to tears. And,
Me too.
it is a long book, but it's because he's taking every opportunity to lay out inequalities, all of the horrors of bearing a child and not knowing what's going to happen to you because you're young and you weren't educated on what the world was like. Like it taps into some of that same stuff like American Rapture with CJ Lee wrote about with like not
Yeah,
understanding how the world works with the four main characters that we get because they're teenagers and they're in this predicament and they don't really even fully understand how they got there. Um, it's a really good one. It's like it's an emotion. It's a heavy one, and it like there are some funny moments because like we kind of know Grady for being funny at times, but like to me this one feels different for being a little bit heavier. You know?
yeah, I agree with that. And I think, I mean, if people don't know, I think Grady's been very open about this, and it's on his website that like this is a personal story to him. He had family
Yeah,
members that went through this. He did a ton of research on
yeah,
what goes into being pregnant and how that process works, because obviously, in case you didn't know, Grady is not a woman; he is a man. But that
yeah,
said, I mean, I feel like Grady writes females in all of his books very well, but particularly this book, it's written with care. It's also, I think, unintentionally timely. I think when he wrote it, Roe v. Wade hadn't been overturned yet. And so now it has, and that makes this book even more timely. So I think, again, I think it's a book we'll look back on and say, this is really what was going on in 2025 when this book was released. So I recommend picking it up, but do know that it's a bit heavy.
yeah. I think if you're in the mindset and mind frame to read something like that, it'll go over fantastically. And even if you're not, I think it still will. But like it hurts a little because
Yeah.
it feels real. But like that's one of the best things that horror does. So that's why we read it. So yeah, I'm also excited to see everybody get their hands on this one. Um, a little bit of somewhat of a tonal shift. I have a novella recommendation
Ooh.
for my next one. So we're going from the very long to the very short. Um, this one is called "This House Isn't Haunted, But We Are" by Stephen Howard. It comes out on April 3rd, and I believe it comes out from Wild Hunt Books. I believe that they're based in the UK. And I think that they're a smaller press. I think they might be indie as well. But I really want to draw some attention to this one. I did read it already, and it is a very, very good story. Basically, it just follows this couple as they move into this house. And they had just suffered like a tremendous tragedy after losing their daughter. And you can tell between the two of them, they're still working out like how to exist and be a couple without their child, and so they have some internal struggles, and then the external struggle. Oh my God, can I talk? The external struggles are that this house is in need of repair. It's kind of, it's been lent out to them as a favor by like an aunt to go stay at this house. Um, so they start seeing a ghostly child around, and they're trying to kind of combat their separate feelings about how to move forward from this tragedy. And it's not in the synopsis, and so I don't want to spoil it because I do feel like it is a little bit of a spoiler, but there is an external character that's not mentioned in the synopsis that makes this book so smart and so emotionally driven. Like, it's one that hurts your feelings, but because it's so like tender. It is a tender,
Yeah.
tender story that like whenever you are trying to connect with people or like be with people in times of crisis or like in after trauma has passed and you don't know how to communicate effectively to get back where you were before, not that you ever really can, but like how to even operate on some level as you did prior. This book like encapsulates that, like trying to bridge that divide like between the before and after. Um it is a really, really good story, and I really want everybody to pick it up. I haven't reviewed it yet because I think that they're asking for reviews to come out a little bit closer to whenever the book releases. But yeah, I was really, really impressed with this novella.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I've heard good things about it from you and from several other people who had read it. This is another, I mean, novellas are always difficult, I feel like, to sell to
Yeah.
people because they're so short, but this one sounds really amazing and I'm excited to know what the twist is too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like I'm not gonna lie, like I think within the first chapter you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I think like part of the intrigue is like getting people to pick it up, so I'm not gonna tell you.
Yeah. No, well,
You you
it
have
worked because like now I'm like,
you
I
have
have
to read
to.
it to find out. So,
Also, it
you
has
don't
such
have.
a great title.
I
So,
know. Well, and like,
yeah.
isn't that, like I like how it confronts what seemingly almost all haunted house novels are about with the very title. Like, the haunted house is never really about the structure being haunted. It's more about the people. And so, one, that's out the way immediately. That's already been addressed. And then even more so, like what the author accomplishes in that space is really, really impressive as well. So yeah, I mean, I always love novellas that manage to get it done in like 200 pages or less. Like that always just it never fails. I'm always impressed. Like
Yeah, me too. Me too. I don't, it seems like it would be impossible to do, but
I
the people who
know.
do it really pull it off.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my next pick is The Red Knot by Monique Asher. It comes out on August 26th. So I am really excited about this. I got to meet Monique in Detroit when I was there last. She is super sweet. She's super talented. This synopsis says it's a blend of occult mystery and small town horror, which I love. It's set in Alaska, so three girls have vanished, and Audra, who is the town's lead detective, her close friend, the island's therapist, has been found murdered. So Audra is going to look into this murder and the disappearance of these teen girls, and it sounds like she is going to uncover some dark history about this island, which sounds right up my alley. I'm so excited. The kind of marketing materials that I've seen around this book too on Instagram and social media have been great. I'm very, very excited about this. I don't think I have an art, but I need to start begging for one because I don't want to wait until August. But I'm really excited. I did not see enough buzz about Monique's first book, Don't Eat the Pie, but it was also
Oh
just
yeah.
really, really great. So I definitely think that's worth checking out too, her debut novel. But again, I think this is like the type of horror that I'm looking for sometimes where I don't need it to be like super extreme and brutal. I kind of want it to be a little bit quiet, but also address some real
Yeah.
life horror. And that's what sounds like this book is going to do.
Yeah. You recommending this one has put it on my radar. I wasn't really aware of it, but yeah, and I really love, like when we had True Detective Night Country come out last year, we also got The Gathering by C.J. Tudor, which is a vampire novel set in
Yeah,
like remote Alaska. I really do like the Alaskan landscape for horror. Like I don't
I
know
do
if you want to
too.
call it like Arctic horror or, winter horror or whatever, but I do like how kind of like the remoteness of it. Like that already adds a layer to that story without really much work having to be done. So I'm really interested to see what this is about. And like you said, sometimes I do like my horror to be a little bit quieter whenever it comes to being like haunting or eerie. It doesn't necessarily have to be so in your face. So I'll be interested. I'm gonna add this one to my list as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I think too the Alaska part, like you said, I agree. It's such a perfect setting and almost feels like Alaska itself becomes a character in the book because
Yeah.
that is such a tough climate in
Yeah, I
general. And so,
know.
I mean,
Yeah.
when you already are kind of having to survive in that, plus add in, whatever occult matters are taking place in this town, I'm excited to see what happens in this one.
Me too. Sign me up. I'm all for it.
I
Okay, so my next pick is actually a sequel. It's Another Fine Mess by Lindy Ryan, and it comes out on April 15th.
Oh, cool.
Um, listen, book one was fantastic. Did you read book one? Bless Your Heart?
No, but I need to.
Dude, you as southerner to southerner, you have to. Like
Okay,
you just have to.
sold.
Yeah, so basically it's set in Texas and I believe it's in the 90s and it is about this family of women. They're known as the Evans women and they run the only funeral parlor in town. And I think it spans like three or four generations. So you have like great grandma, grandma, mom, and daughter who you follow throughout the book, and like the dead are no longer staying dead. So they're kind of like, they somewhat know what to do, and you're like, well, how do they know what to do? And then so it becomes they're dealing with the issue in the present, and then you're slowly learning about the past through what's transpiring. So, the sequel is gonna, pick up right after where the first book left off, I believe. Um, I'm all for it. I just like it's kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets I don't even know. There's definitely like, we have to protect the town, we have to do what's right, like we have the knowledge of this, blah blah blah. There's that component to it that's great, but like the southernness of it and the connection between these women is just like everything. It's almost like Gilmore Girls. It's like if Buffy and Gilmore Girls had a novel, this would be it.
That sounds amazing.
It is. It's so good. So I'm really, really excited for the sequel. Lindsay Ryan's great. I trust her completely. And like, if this is a whole series of like six or seven novels, you would not hear me complaining. That's all I'm saying.
I I'm one, I need to read this now because I
Yes.
I didn't know. Like I've heard about it, but I didn't realize like I think the premise for it. But too, like, yeah, can we have more horror series? Because I feel like we don't get them very often. And when we do, it's like YA or it's more leans like towards romance or dark romance. Like I want
Yeah.
a good horror series that I can like stick with.
I agree. And I think it's such a hard line to toe with horror, I think, because horror can get really repetitive. Like
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like Stranger Things, like a lot of the criticism that you see with that show is like the same things keep happening every season. Like, oh, the big bad gets here and like this is what happens. But I think that there is a way that it can be done. And I think it's really through strong character work because if you're
Yeah.
invested in those characters, like who the fuck cares? Like what else is gonna happen? Like you're just there to see if they're okay and like who they're connecting with and all this different stuff. So I like I said, I'm all for more horror series. I think it is a little bit more difficult than some other genres to pull off. Um, but yeah, I'm all for it.
I agree. I think I agree with you on the character part too. I mean, I would be happy to just check in on those characters and like see how they're doing. I don't really
Yeah.
need like a big plot every time. Like
Yeah.
just give me the characters that I like and that's gonna work for me.
Yeah.
So I am gonna say Play Nice by Rachel Harrison is my next pick. So it's coming out on September 9th. Um, this is another haunted house book, but I think it's going to have a twist. So, a woman must confront the demons of her past when she attempts to fix up her childhood home in a clever haunted house take. Rachel, Rachel's the best at doing this. I feel
Yes.
like I never know. I feel like I go into her books thinking I know what it's going to be about, and she surprises me in the best way. Um, I'm really excited for this to see like kind of the path that it takes. Rachel's super smart. Her characters are smart, and I'm very excited that we have a new Rachel Harrison book coming out.
Listen, you Rachel could like write the phone book. Okay. She could just be giving me like straight facts and I would read it. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I am obsessed with her writing. I love everything that she's accomplished character wise and everything that she said or commented on about the female experience is just like it just hits so strongly every
Yeah.
time. You're like, holy shit, has she been in my brain? Um, so this will be an interesting one. Just mostly for the same reasons you said to see like what she does with a well-known trope. And I mean, obviously she's done it with such sharp teeth with werewolves, and then so thirsty with vampires. I mean, like all of her stuff is kind of hit on something that's well known, and then said something new. So I mean, I can't say enough good things about Rachel and her writing. I mean, just sign me up. Like literally, I just want to read the damn story.
She's just so cool, and she's
Yeah.
so nice, and like Team Rachel.
Team Rachel all the way. My next pick is Bad Either and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. This comes out on April 29th. I actually started this one last night, night before.
Oh,
And I will not lie, I fell asleep. That is not a fault of the book. I am just a very sleepy girl these days. Um, but this is a super interesting story to me. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how some people respond to it because it's set during COVID. And I
oh,
find like a lot of people have had strong feelings about books set during COVID, which I mean, like to me, I kind of like it because
I do too.
it's being honest about where we're at and what we've been through and what we've dealt with as a society. And I'm not saying that like anybody who doesn't or like ignores it is being cheap or cowardly or whatever. Like I think sometimes some stories are just fit for this time and sometimes other stories are not. So like do whatever you need to do as an author to find the setting for that story. But this one in particular, I think will do exceptionally well in this setting. So basically, her and her sister, they live in New York during the pandemic, and they are Asian. They are, I believe, they live in Chinatown. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten far enough to see where they're from yet. But they go down the subway. They're kind of, a little bit at odds because I believe that her sister, Cora's sister, wants to move on and go off and do different things, and Delilah, the sister, is, I'm sorry, I have that backwards. Cora is the one who wants to stay home. Delilah is the one who wants to go off and do separate things. And then all of a sudden, Delilah gets pushed in front of a train.
Oh,
Not by her sister, um, by somebody else. And the only thing that that person says whenever they push her is "bat eater." So obviously you can see where this ties into COVID and it being really timely. So Cora, you can tell like from the perspective that I've read so far, you can tell like she's a really interesting character. It reminds me a lot of The Eyes Are the Best Part, by Monica Kim. Like kind of like you're getting in the head of somebody who may not be doing super well mentally or emotionally for a long time, and you're gonna follow them wherever they go. So basically, Cora, she doesn't have a problem cleaning up bloody messes. She becomes a crime scene cleanup technician, and yeah, I think the story just kind of advances from there. There's like a lot of internal conflict and external conflict that we're going to see. I'm doing my best to not read too much about it because I want to go into this one blind. I have seen remarkable things about it from other people. Um, I'm just like, I've heard about the female rage aspect of this book and like kind of how unhinged it gets. And I love to be surprised by that. I love to be taken aback by that, and so I'm all here for it. I'm really, really excited to see where it goes and like let's get wild. Let's do it. I feel like it's the only thing that'll like pull me out of my slump from reading When the Wolf Comes Home because I'm just like still so depresso over it. But
I feel that. I've heard the same thing about this book. I'm really excited for it. I think it may already be out in the UK.
I don't know, honestly.
Maybe.
I had the same question because I got the arc, I believe, from the publisher in the UK. I have the blue cover with the
Okay.
spray bottle on it, and I believe
Yeah.
that that's the UK version. And then like I looked at the published date on it, and let me check Goodreads while we're right here talking about it. I can tell you.
But
And I
I'm
thought,
excited for this one. It sounds really great. I actually, when I first saw it, thought it was like a short story collection, and then when I realized it was not, and it's a novel, I was very pleasantly surprised. So I'm looking forward to this one coming out in the US.
yeah, let's find out if it's out because I was super confused as well about the publishing date on this one. But actually, it'll be out on January 7th, so
Okay.
soon. So same day as Clay's book, but it in the UK it'll actually be out before it's out here. So I don't know how I ended up with that copy, but thank you to the kind people of the UK who who sent me a copy.
Well, the UK cover is really cool too with the spray bottle. So
Yeah, and that's the one that I have, and I love
yeah,
it. If you want to see it, maybe you can kind of see it here.
yeah.
But
Maybe I'll order
anyway,
that one from Blackwell's then.
oh yeah, do that because you'll get it before everything else.
That would
And I think it
absolutely.
is. I think it is on NetGalley too, like the US version. So if you want to request it there, you can.
Okay. I think I haven't. I think they have not approved me because we my horrendous net galley ratio,
That that
feedback
awkward
ratio.
moment whenever you request something on NetGalley and they either decline you or just like don't acknowledge your existence at all.
I can we just say really quick how personal it feels when they reject you? Like it's
It
not.
is
These people
rough.
don't
It
know
is rough.
you, but it
Yeah.
feels personal in the moment.
Yeah, like somehow I was able to hustle and get my percentage close to 80. I'm not at the recommended 80%, but I'm close to it. And like that's all I know that's all that they have to go off of. I get it. I get it. I do. But like when you deny me at like 50% and I am just starting, I am just a girl with a NetGalley account who just started doing this. You have to be kind to me. I am delicate and I am fragile.
My favorite thing is when they send you the email, it's like maybe put what you do in your bio, and I'm like, it is in my bio what I do.
Yeah, you
It
need
could
more links. What other link do you want from
it
me?
couldn't possibly be that my ratio is like 6%.
Oh, NetGalley, we love you. We hate you. We can't live without you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't envy these publishers. I'm sure we're sometimes I know I can be very annoying. And I'm like, what if you sent me this to
Oh
read?
no, I know I am too. I feel so bad. Especially the people at Tor Nightfire. I'm so sorry. I
Yeah.
want to just read all of your
Yeah. Actually,
books.
I would like to make a public apology to Tor and Titan Books for
Yeah.
being so annoying.
This is
And Del
actually this
Rey.
was this was all just our public apology.
Yeah.
Forget Blues Traveler, forget the horror novels that are coming out in 2025. We're just sorry.
We're just girls.
Yeah.
Just we're just girls trying to read books. Um, so my next pick is Dark Sisters by Kristi DeMeester. It's coming out
Yes.
late next year, December 9th. So we've got a while to wait, which makes me a little sad because this sounds amazing. So it's about three women who are chasing a curse through generations in order to reclaim their power. Um, Based on the synopsis, it looks like there's going to be time jumps 1750, 1953, and 2007. Um, I'm really excited for this. I really loved Such a Pretty Smile. I haven't read Kristi's other books. I know she has like a few other horror books before Such a Pretty Smile, but I really, really enjoy a family saga, especially if there's a curse involved. So this one sounds amazing. Very sad that I have to wait till next December, but very excited that it's been announced. So maybe we can read it a little bit early, and get everyone
Yes.
else excited about it too. I haven't seen this one talked about as much as some of the others. Maybe it's because it's coming out so late in the year. So I don't know if it was recently
Yeah.
announced, but it looks like it's going to be great.
I think she just did the cover reveal for it this last week. I feel
Oh,
like I just
really?
saw
I
the
didn't see
cover
the cover
for it.
reveal. I just saw it. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll have
Oh,
to
it's
check that
cool.
out.
You got to go look at it.
I'm gonna look at
Yeah,
it.
so I have a copy of Such a Pretty Smile at Rachel Harrison's her talking about it and I was like, "Oh, I need to read this." So I'm excited because I've just heard great things in general, but I do need to pick it up. And also part of what you said says that you need to read Bless Your Heart now. If those are the things that you enjoy, then you have to read that book right now.
You're like, how did you miss this?
No, it's just it's like it hits on some of the same things that you enjoy so much. So like we got to make
Okay,
it happen.
I will. I have it, so I just need to read it.
My last pick, and I want to say there are so many books coming out this year. Like we agreed on 10,
Yeah,
but there are like I have many, many more.
me
So
too.
and I think Depending on how long my Substack article takes me to finish for my favorite reads of this year, I might write my own most anticipated list. Um, Also, I need to point everybody to Emily Hughes's website, readjumpscares.com, because she has a definitive list of everything that's coming out, like, and for years prior too. So if you're looking what came out like last year, this year, and then moving forward, she has this mega list of all of these books, and like pretty much as she finds out about them, she'll add them. So like I know, like I don't think she had Rachel's book before, but that was like really just announced like a few weeks ago. So I think that that
Yeah.
might have been added. But at any rate, that's what I use to keep
I
my
use
life
that too.
organized. So it's all of the books, their publishers, their authors, their release dates, and a small synopsis. Anyway, shout out Emily. So my last pick, although I have many, many more, is 8114 by Joshua Hull.
Oh,
Comes out on
yeah.
August 26th. I believe this comes out with Clash. This is gonna be like another haunted house story, but I believe that this is pretty personal to Josh. It takes place where the main character goes back to his hometown to I think he's like a podcaster or a documentarian or something like that. And basically he finds out that his friend committed suicide and it happened in the ruins of his childhood home. So he kind of has to go back and reckon with this tragedy and kind of everything that happened in the past and same in the in the present. Obviously this is like one of my favorite tropes in horror. Like everybody loves The Haunting of Hill House. I'm the Mike Flanagan series on Netflix. And yes, I do understand it was Shirley Jackson first. I get it. But widely popular is the Mike Flanagan series for the way that they kind of did the dual timeline between what was going on as kids and what was going on in, the present as adults. And that's something that like a trope that I will always, always, always read. And I also really enjoyed Joshua's other novella that came out earlier this year. It was called Mouth, and it was absurd fun. It was like about a monster in the ground and serial killers and B horror movies and just like insanity. It was super fun. But this is definitely a heavier book, so I'm really interested to see how he handles some of the eerier, heavier aspects of horror. I have no doubt it's going to be great because my friend George has read it and told me nothing but good things. I'm really excited to read this one. I'm trying to save it for a rainy day because I'm going to be sad, I know, whenever I'm done with it. But I think it's going to be another heavy one, and it always kind of feels that way whenever it comes from a personal place for the author. And that's the case with this one. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I think it might be a contender for some of the best stuff that we read next year.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one too. I've heard good things about it. I also feel like Clash and I'm going to include Shortwave, both indie publishers, but both just absolutely crushing it with what they're
Oh
releasing.
yeah.
So many good books from both of them this year. I'm really excited to see what both of them put out next year. Usually, I feel like we talk a lot about kind of auto buy authors and authors that you would always buy from. Those two in particular are go-to publishers
Publishers,
for
yeah,
me, and I think you feel the
absolutely.
same way. So I feel
They're doing
comfortable.
new stuff, yeah,
Yeah,
I feel
I feel
like.
comfortable recommending like pretty much anything that Clash and Shortwave would put out. It's great. The authors are great. So I'm excited for this one, but in general, just excited to see like what else comes out from Clash next year.
Yeah, absolutely same here. I mean, it's just like it's really incredible to see like what Shortwave has done like
Yeah.
in the last like 2 or 3 years, like how they've taken off. And I'm not been as familiar with Clash as I have been with Shortwave, but like you said, everything that I've read from either one of them has been fantastic. So no complaints from me.
No, no, same here. My last pick is gonna be Fiend by Alma Katsu. Um, I feel like Alma just the books that she writes are so good. She does historical horror very well. She also just has a super interesting background with working in government agencies. Super smart writing. This seems like another kind of family saga. I think that when I wrote this list last night, I don't think this had a release date that I could find, but I think as of today, it does.
She might have, I feel like she might have like just announced when the release
Yeah.
date is, like on Threads or something like that.
I want to say it's in September.
Yeah. I
We'll
think it's a ways
include
away.
Yeah, we'll include the link and everything when we post this, but I'm really excited for this. Again, I think that her books are really smart. They're accessible for everyone. I liked her spy novels a lot. And again, like that's not usually my jam, but she's just so good. I love them. So I'm really excited for this one. I don't think it has a cover yet. I think it's relatively new, but it's something to
Yeah.
look forward to for the new year.
Yeah. I love the title. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a hell of a title. I mean, I love
yeah,
a one word title and a one word title like Fiend. Like, sign me
that's
up. I'm
great.
there. Say less.
I feel like there's a lot of books that haven't been announced yet.
Me too. Like I know that like I'm trying to remember who it was who like I know was working on something and it just hasn't been said yet. Like I know
Yeah,
Rachel, like I knew Rachel had like when I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago about most anticipated reads, Rachel's hadn't been announced yet and I was like I knew it was coming, but I didn't know the title or like I don't think it has a cover or anything yet. So yeah, I feel like they're slowly trickling in for the end of 2025.
I think so too. So, maybe we'll have more to add to this, but like you
Yeah.
said, there's definitely more that we couldn't cover here. Is there anything particular that other than books that you're looking forward to seeing horror do next year? Because I feel like this was such a banner year for horror. I feel like it was
Yeah.
everywhere. And so I'm hoping that that's the case. But is there anything that you would like to see happen, even not just with horror authors, but with like the community, the publishers?
Yeah, I think for me, one, everybody needs to play nice.
Yeah.
We
Yeah. Be
less
nice to each
drama.
other.
Less drama. Now that there's been like I don't want to minimize or maximize anybody's experience, but like, for the most part, everybody that I've interacted with in the horror community has been incredibly kind, nice, accepting, and welcoming. And I've just seen that that experience hasn't been the case for other people, and that makes me really sad.
Yeah.
But that aside, I think, like I said, I predict that horror in 2025 is going to go for like big swings,
Yeah.
which I really am anxious to see. And if I'm right on that, I'm interested to see what's said and like where we're going as a genre. And like, I've talked to a few people about this already and like, we can typically look back and see like what inciting event happened that caused like whatever trope or whatever to kind of emerge in later years. So like for instance, like with Witchcraft or Wayward Girls, we're getting it now. But
Yeah.
and I don't know when Grady wrote it exactly, and I know it is a personal story, but if you look back 2 or 3 years ago, we were dealing with Roe v. Wade. And like there's been a lot of pregnancy horror that has come out in the last few years, like Elle Nash's Deliver Me. I feel like there was a couple other ones as well that are not coming to me at this moment. But, it'll be interesting to see what events have influenced the writing that it's always interesting to see like that comes out now. Um, that being said, like it's like a ripple effect, so we may not see the kinds of stories that are impacted by the events of this last year for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing that I'm really excited to see too in general, I mean, I know it's a huge event and God doesn't need any more press from us, but the end of the world as we know it, anthology, I think
Yeah.
that opening that door to re-explore a novel like The Stand, I think like beyond it being like really, really cool and all these different authors being able to share a piece of their own writing within this bigger world that Stephen King has created, I'm really interested to see if we see it happen again like with either, like do we go back and do we do something with Peter Straub's work or, just like some of the other big heavy hitters of, yesterday's horror. I mean, Stephen King is still very present in today's genre, but just the idea that there's some expansion and like giving the space to other voices to tell these stories on like the really influential works that have shaped the genre, I think that that's really cool because like I know how much like for instance like Jonathan Jans loves Stephen King's writing and the
Yeah.
fact that he'll get to have a story in that anthology like I can't wait to see how that reads. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for that too. And I think it's exciting to see them so excited, the authors so
Yeah,
excited. I mean,
I
obviously they're
agree.
always excited when they have a new book coming out, but this one in particular, this anthology seems really special for them and there's so many big names in it.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. And I agree with you. I really hope that we see more anthologies like this come out. I want to see these authors kind of play in the sandbox a little bit more, because it feels like a creative exercise somewhat for them to put themselves in a world that they didn't create and then write from it. I'm really excited for it. I'm also excited to see more crossover between our communities. So,
Yeah.
I think we're very insular in the horror community, but I felt like this year I saw a lot more readers from outside of the horror community come in and start picking up the books that we normally talk about. And I liked that. I feel like one, it's obviously it's great for the authors because their books are getting more publicity, but also I got to meet people that I normally wouldn't because they weren't, within our normal kind of horror circle. Um, it's so funny because like on Facebook, I'm part of Books of Horror, and so I see their post a lot. And I kept seeing incidents around the house, like Josh Mallerman's incidents around the house, just constantly. And I assumed it was books of horror, and it wasn't. It was in like psychological thrillers and thriller books. And
Oh
it's just
yeah.
that kind of thing is exciting. And I hope that we see more of it because I do think that this is a community that is welcoming, but sometimes can seem scary because you don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And so just helping readers like find those books that like normally maybe they wouldn't pick up because they think it would be too scary for them or challenging is not the best word, but just so outside their normal genre. I think that if we can kind of continue that pattern, I think it helps all of us, but also it's just nice to see like our author friends kind of have support from a different audience than they normally would have. And I hope we see more of that
Yeah.
in 2025.
No, that makes perfect sense. And like I think the same like to the same point, like I got my mom to read Cackle this year by
Yeah.
Rachel Harrison. And like I think she's listening to So Thirsty now, which is like, okay,
Well,
mom,
okay.
are we getting into horror maybe?
Well,
Uh, but no, I really do like it whenever we can kind of bridge those gaps and like get some people to reach across the aisle at the bookstore and like, maybe try something that they weren't, as susceptible to trying before. Um, and I think what's really important and, like my goal as a reviewer or somebody who promotes books like on social media and just whatever space I can, honestly, is like
yeah.
I want to put the right book in the right person's hands. And I like I'm about to get on a soapbox for a minute here, but I won't be too long. But I do feel like, a lot of the times I do feel like I post very positively about books all of the time. But I do think, there is a place for criticism, and that kind of thing. But I do know for me, like in today's world and the way that social media is I really kind of only want to share the positive. Like I'll kindly point out some things that don't work for me, but you
Yeah.
know, I think that books can be positive and there's a lot of things that work for people, different people. Like think I can write about a review about a book or talk about a book and who it would belong to, like who's gonna really enjoy that book in a way that makes sense to those people, even if it didn't hit 100% for me. And I think that's really important because I think that's how you expand readership. I think
Yeah.
that like gatekeeping or being like phrasing it in a negative way never helps. Like, oh, well, you could never read this because like you're not into whatever. Like, I'm not into body horror, but I love The Eyes Are the Best Part. And so like
Yeah.
if we had that kind of negative gatekeeping, then that really keeps people from reading books. So I know it seems like I'm constantly saying like every book is the best book, but like every book is the best book to somebody. So like let's
Yeah.
help find those people. Let's help put those books in those people's hands. And like if it does mean that they're reaching across the aisle to try horror instead of thriller for the first time, I mean that's how it happened for me. I
Yeah.
was kind of getting tired of police procedurals and like I kind of picked up the rhythm and format of those and I decided to try something else and here we are. So I'm all for doing that. And, we talk a lot about like where books fall genre wise and stuff like that. And like it really doesn't matter. Like
No.
it like classification doesn't matter, but I do know it matters to a lot of people. And it's like that's why I like to talk about it. Because like I said, if it gets the right book in the right person's hands, then our job is done.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think I feel like that I do the same thing where I'm constantly like, oh, this was so great. I mean, like trust me, I read books that I didn't like. I'm just
Yeah.
not talking about them. And the reason I'm not
Yeah.
is because I don't want to turn off a potential reader who would have loved that book by me inadvertently saying something negative about it. Um, I think that we just have to be careful in like how we're phrasing things because like you said, it is
Yeah.
the best book to someone, and just because you or I didn't like it doesn't mean someone else won't. I guess this is also probably a good time to friendly remind people to please stop tagging authors and negative
And
reviews
negative reviews,
online.
yes. Oh my God.
Like we're not
That's
going to
what
do that anymore in
I was say
2025.
that's what I want to see in 2025 is that stopping. And like I don't think that people this was something that was pointed out to me the other day. I don't think that I've done it, and if I have, this is also my sincerest apology that I've done it. It's like backhanded comments that you don't even realize that like
Yeah, I
sometimes you
think you
can
and I
make
were
in a
talking about
review.
this.
Like if you say, oh, well, I actually preferred this other book more, but this was fine. Like, that's still kind of like an insult.
Yeah.
And like, you can definitely say like when we were talking about Black River Orchard and Staircase in the Woods, like I definitely said, like I really enjoyed Black River Orchard more, but I'm not going to sit here and say that there's something wrong with Staircase in the Woods. Like there are
No.
just certain aspects of those two books that might work better with me whenever I read them because one, when you read something is always so subjective.
Yeah.
Um but just don't be disparaging. Like, just
No.
try. I think that that's like the big thing too. Like, if you're gonna tag an author in a review, make sure like you are being kind. Like, and if it, like I listen, if you don't like a book, you should talk about it because that might help
Yeah.
somebody find that book. Just don't tag the author. Don't tag the
Yeah.
author. They don't need
Don't
to
tag
see
the
it.
author. No, they're people and they have feelings too. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard it from them. Like I know I
Yeah.
have. Like they see it because you've tagged them in something. And it's just human nature once you start reading something, even if you know it's negative, to keep reading. I want to see that go away in 2025. I don't like it. I think most of us who review online frequently aren't big fans of it. Um, so yeah, just stop being negative about book
Yeah.
reviews and tagging people. It's so mean.
I know. I totally agree. Like, listen, I found some of my favorite books because of negative reviews, but the author was not tagged. That's always the
No.
caveat. Like, just do not bring them into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm looking forward to in 2025. I think that there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
And like, horror's just expanding. Like, we're just getting so much. So it's always interesting to see what new stories come onto the front and where our fascination lies and the cool things that you can do with things that may feel worn out, I mean, there's just like so much room for possibility at this point, it feels like.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm really excited to see what we get. And I think we'll just keep hearing about like more great books that are coming out
Yeah.
next year. Like I feel like we're in like a horror renaissance and I'm here for it.
Totally,
It's been a really
absolutely.
great year and I think next year will be really good too.
Yes, for sure. Totally agree. So do you wanna
Do you want
play
me to play
one
this out?
last do you wanna play one last little tune?
Sure. Okay. I'm such a professional. I don't know why I'm being so nervous.
Perfect. Fantastic. Five
Oh,
stars.
thank you. Thank you.
I
Thank
would
you
I
so
would
much.
tag you in that review. 5 stars.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. She's not the harmonica player for me, but she is for someone.
Blues Traveler, that's who she's for.